Hey everyone, welcome to the second lesson on our English language GCSE series, where we're going through the reading sections. That's kind of the comprehension, sometimes the comparison, the evaluation, the analysis. Last week we went through language analysis and how to break down quotes really well in order to write better in our exams, in our GCSEs. And this week we're going to be going through word classes together. So let's get started. I've picked a piece that was the GCSE extract for paper 1 of AQA about 4 years ago now. Wow, time flies. But it's about this girl called Alice. Alice is on an archaeological dig in France, and she makes this big discovery. Now, you don't have to worry too much about the context of that for today's lesson, because today's lesson is really much more about, we're going to be picking some word choices and thinking about how to write about them. And as usual, we'll then do a bit of a model paragraph at the end. And hopefully I will give myself more than 3 minutes to do that, because I really have been challenging myself there on giving myself no time to write these paragraphs. So when we think about word class analysis, what we need to think about is we need to think about the different word types that you can look at, first of all. So if you aren't familiar with some of these classes, then definitely you need to either ask me about it or find a resource on it. You want to be looking for nouns. There are different types. You've got concrete nouns, abstract nouns, proper nouns, collective nouns. But generally, let's just focus on nouns for now. You've got adjectives, you've got verbs, you've got adverbs. You might go into some things like pronouns or possessive pronouns, potentially, depending on the points that you will be doing. You might go into conjunctions. You know, this isn't an exhaustive list. Now, once you've identified what the word type is, what you then often will want to do is go into either the symbolism or the connotations or the subtext, or possibly the imagery that is created within the word that you've chosen. Now, the other cool thing about this lesson today is that a lot of this will build off of the first lesson. So if you haven't checked out the language analysis lesson from last week, definitely go check that out. Because a lot of the time, if there's a metaphor or a simile or juxtaposition or oxymoron, whatever, one of those language devices, you can also still dive into that through symbolism, connotation, subtext, or imagery. This is your golden goose, all right? This is how you lay some golden eggs. Because if you just put, yeah, here's a metaphor, Mr. or Mrs. Examiner, you're not going to get that many marks for that. If you can actually break down and explain it, whether it's a word choice or a language device, that's where the level 9 answers are, okay? That's what you need to do. So let's just have a look at a few things. Now, last week, I put some specific effects that we were trying to get. This week, I thought it'd be more interesting to look just more broadly at the piece. So I'm not trying to get a specific idea out at the moment. I'm just showing you kind of how my brain might work if I was reading this for the first time. The truth is, it's not the first time. It's probably the 100th time. I've probably read this 100 to 200 times, genuinely. I know that's sad. Anyway, I have a lot of students. So the first word, well, let's read it together. So Alice unscrews the top of her water bottle. Now, you know, this isn't part of the lesson, but that's called in media res as well. That's a little bonus Easter egg for you. In media res means that it begins in the middle. This is something really good for you to think about. We'll be doing structure next week, but you know, I'll just quickly say that. It's warm, but she's too thirsty to care and drinks it down in great gulps. So this word gulps to begin with is going to be a word that I'd like to think about. So this word gulps, gulping, in this case it's a noun, but it could be, usually gulping would be a verb choice, right? So we'll think about the imagery of it. So the imagery of gulps, it sort of shows kind of extreme thirst, which maybe shows like a certain level of discomfort where she is. We don't know why yet. It's pretty early on in the piece, but it shows that discomfort. And it also potentially shows a level as well in terms of the connotations of someone who has a little bit of desperation at this point as well. There seems to be a bit of desperation here. The only other thing that you could go, this is really diving deep now, is you could think about, we find out that Alice this is her first time on a dig. So it could also be sort of showing her inexperience. Either way, I'm skeptical that many of you watching this would have gone to that level of depth on that word gulps. The reason that I'm trying to instill this in you is because if you can find a word choice or a more niche little thing and make a good point from that, that immediately puts you in the examiner's head as what we call sophisticated or perceptive, particularly perceptive. What we're looking for basically from you is to find points and find explanations in places that no one else can find them. So that right there is one. Now, the keener-eyed of you will also see, of course, as a bonus, you've got great gulps, so that is alliterative as well. So you've got alliteration, you've got word choice, you've got all that good stuff. Below, the heat haze shimmers above the dented tarmac of the road. So this is an adjective choice. And the fact that the tarmac here is dented, it suggests kind of wear and tear, or maybe it could even be, if we think about the symbolism now, because like I told you, I'm thinking about this all the time, symbolism, connotation, subtext, imagery. The imagery of the dented tarmac creates sort of an unpleasant image, but the symbolism of it as well, the symbolism of dented, it's damage. And now again, I'm pushing this really far, but this could be perhaps foreshadowing or foreboding something coming. Yeah, some sort of either danger or some sort of some sort of pressure or unpleasantness. The dented tarmac. Okay. Above her, the sky is an endless blue. I could go into endless. I think that's a good word choice to look at as well. And the cicadas. So cicadas are like little crickets, basically, like almost like little locust looking things, but they're more like crickets. Keep up their unrelenting chorus hidden in the shade of the dry grass. So unrelenting is an adverb choice if something is unrelenting. And what this does again is it creates this sense of suffering in this place. So she's really thirsty, she's gulping down. I'm starting to bring this together now, as you should. So she's gulping down her water. There's this heat haze, it's very unpleasantly hot. She's getting very, very hot and sweaty in this place. There's dented tarmac, so it's quite an unpleasant, maybe more desolate place. And there's this annoying, unrelenting chorus, because unrelenting is a negative adverb choice. Yeah, it's not a pleasant chirping of these cicadas. It's unrelenting. It's like, just shut up. She's getting annoyed. Okay, so suffering again. So you can bring those things together and create a great impression here. This might be what we end up doing. One of the points or ideas from reading this first paragraph is Alice seems very determined since she has many hardships on the dig, yet perseveres. Yeah, be great if I could type today. Apologies for that. All right, so we'll dive into the next one and we'll try and get a bit more symbolism, imagery, connotations, that sort of stuff. So it's her first time in the Pyrenees. So remember, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but I said about how the gulping of the water maybe shows her inexperience. Maybe she's not taking breaks like she should and things like that in this heat. So inexperience, although she feels very much at home. Now, this is obviously a juxtaposition. We're not going to talk about language devices today, but there's a juxtaposition there. She's been told that in the winter, the jagged peaks of the mountains are covered in snow. Now, the word choice, again, there's lots of imagery in here that you can look at. I'm just going to take the word jagged. So jagged peaks, this again is an adjective. And as I'm talking about this, your brain might already be starting to think about it the way that I do. So the symbolism of that, the connotations of that, the subtext of that, the imagery of that. So the imagery of jagged peaks, you get this quite dangerous image, right? And the connotations of that are danger. I should have said that. So the image is the jagged peaks. the connotations is the danger. The symbolism also then creates this quite negative atmosphere, this dangerous atmosphere. So all of those things together, we're just going to put connotations of danger. Now, what's interesting then in terms of the imagery is the fact that they're covered in snow. Yeah, so this simple verb choice, covered, it also creates a sense of secrecy or even more danger because they can't see the jagged peaks. Imagine if you're like walking along on some snow and underneath your feet, there's actually these jagged rocks and peaks and things. So that the danger is almost being softened by the snow. Again, very deep stuff with these word choices. In the spring, okay, another one. So spring, whenever you see anything to do with weather, obviously that's often pathetic fallacy, or the seasons or light and dark, these are all great things to pick out. So spring, connotations of a fresh start. Now, spoilers, we come to know that Alice does make a big archaeological discovery in this piece. So this idea that it's springtime is connotations of a fresh start, and it's symbolic of her discovery, which starts a new season for her in her life. So whenever you see spring, summer, autumn, winter, darkness or lightness, shadows, clouds, anything to do with that sort of setting, word choices, connotation, symbolism, really, really good. But now we've got delicate pink flowers, or flowers of pink and mauve and white, peep out of their hiding places in the great expanses of rock. Now, just quickly, this word peep is quite interesting. This is a verb choice. And the verb choice peep is quite a timid action. So this can do two things. It sort of personifies the flowers, obviously, to make them seem quite cute. They're quite cute, innocent, and that makes this place seem a little bit nicer. But the other thing about peeping, if there's some danger, there's a good chance that you might sort of peep round to see what's going on quite timidly, but you're not gonna, if you peep, you're sort of, you see if I can do this with the phone, like you're just sort of like looking out just around the corner, right? So it could also suggest the dangers to be found on this mountain. So again, we get more suspense through this. In the early summer, the pastures are green and speckled with yellow buttercups, but now the sun has flattened the land into submission, turning the greens to brown. So we've got juxtaposition there. We're not going to talk about that today. But the word submission, now, I talked last week about how some of you might hate the fact that in English, most stuff is in the gray. It's not normally black or white. In this case, though, I do think that there's a fairly black and white interpretation. I don't think that my first interpretation, that the flowers create this cute, innocent vibe, is right, because now we've got this word submission. So the word submission, of course, has connotations of backing down, surrendering to the nature and the setting of this location. So that then links back to the jagged peaks, the fact that there's a lot of danger to be found here. And all of this adds on a new level to the resilience of Alice, the fact she's in this hot, dangerous, desolate place. She's not got much experience. There's a lot of hardship here, yet she perseveres through. And then when she does come to make her discovery, it then glorifies that discovery even more as a result. So hopefully, as I'm going through these word choices with you, you can see the depth that you can get to if you really analyze the living heck out of the words. So this is next level comprehension. This is next level analysis. This is how you get to level 9. Every word needs to be seen as significant. Every word you need to squeeze out the deeper meanings, the symbolisms, the connotations, the subtext, the imagery. Now, subtext is going to be a little bit difficult for me to talk about with this piece, just because Subtext is normally best shown through the thoughts and feelings of the character. So let's see if we can get a little bit of subtext out of this next bit, just so that I've also done that, because I've done plenty of symbolism, plenty of imagery, some connotations, but we do also want to get some subtext. So in the main camp of the lower slopes, Alice can see her colleagues standing under the big canvas awning. She can just pick out Sheila in her trademark black outfit. It's killing me not to put some of this in as well, actually, but never mind. Well, let's just quickly talk about the awning. So this is a noun choice, and it shows the experience of the other diggers, right? So Alice is off on her own. She's getting battered by the midday sun or whatever. It's unrelenting chorus of cicadas. Yet the more experienced archaeologists here are covered under a nice awning, which is like a big umbrella, hiding themselves from the sun, probably plenty of water. So it shows the experience. Now let's go one level deeper. We can also start to think about the meaning of the piece. So I think that the meaning here, this is kind of cool, is that sometimes to make big discoveries in life, you have to push yourself outside your comfort zone. I think that's a pretty good message for you all right now as you're going into your GCSEs. These next 8 to 10 weeks are going to be pretty hellish for you. You're going to have to lose a bit of sleep possibly over these things, revising, digging deep. But then you get the glory of summer afterwards, and hopefully the glory of some great grades. But so Alice forms a juxtaposition, obviously, with the colleagues, because she's off out in the heat and the sun whilst they're covered in the safety of the awning. They're all digging near each other as well, most likely, right? This is now getting into the subtext. The subtext is that she is willing to go out and be more daring than they are, and it's maybe partly due to her lack of experience. And yet that lack of experience is actually going to be a good thing for her in the long run. You get all of that just from the word awning, potentially, once you combine it with some other things. She's surprised they've stopped already. It's early in the day to be taking a break, but then the whole team is a bit demoralized. It's painstaking, monotonous work for the most part, the digging and scraping, the cataloging, recording. So obviously here you could talk about the many negative, painful, tedious verb choices, and you can combine them together. So far, they've turned up little of significance to justify their efforts. They've come across a few fragments of medieval pots and bowls and a couple of late 12th or 13th century arrowheads, but certainly no evidence of the Stone Age village, which is the focus of the excavation. I stopped it there. So let's just talk about the word fragments again as well, because I want to do a bit more subtext. So the subtext, what subtext means, just in case any of you don't know, is like an underlying meaning to the words. So a fragment, obviously this noun choice is very insignificant. Yeah, insignificant. So the subtext is that so far in this archaeological dig, there isn't much significance to anything that they found. And she sort of explicitly says this here, little of significance, but she also implicitly says that through the fragments and words like that. It kind of shows that there's not much to this dig so far. So in a nutshell, that's what you're trying to do when you're going through word class analysis. You're going through nouns, you're going through adjectives, verbs, adverbs, possibly pronouns. I didn't mention any possessive pronouns. Do we have any? No, we don't have any in here. No, okay, we don't have any, unfortunately, in this bit. But pronouns, particularly possessive pronouns, you're looking out for words like my, mine, ours, words like that. So it shows ownership. If there was a word in there for this, I apologize. I didn't notice it though, and I didn't seem to be able to find it. So let's finish like normal with a bit of a model paragraph, trying to really dive deep into the word class analysis. Now, this would be really good for any of your shorter or longer analysis questions, okay? So any question where you're being asked to analyze language or structure, in this case, we'll just focus on the language bit. This is the sort of way that you should be writing about word choices. So let me just delete this stuff out, or actually what I'll do, I'll just turn it into a couple. Can I turn it into a couple of columns quickly? You're going to do that for me? This is killing me. Is there anything? No. Okay, fine. All right, I will just write it underneath them. So we'll talk about how Alice is described in this piece. The reason I want to choose that is because actually the piece that we've read here is much less about Alice and much more about the surroundings. So I want you to see how through symbolism, connotation, subtext, imagery, and so on, you can actually learn a lot about the character as well as about the setting. So, as usual, guys, we always try and do point, then evidence, then technique, then explanation, then some reader response. So we'll keep to that format in almost every part of the exam, regardless pretty much of the exam boards. Sometimes you're going to want to put more than one bit of evidence, one technique. So you might end up doing sort of point, evidence, technique, explain, evidence, technique, explain. We'll see how we go. I've given myself slightly longer than normal. So, I'm not having a panic attack just yet. So through the opening paragraphs of, I forget the name of the piece, so I'll just put the text for now, source A. Through the opening paragraphs of the text, Alice is presented as an inexperienced yet determined volunteer on the dig site. I decided I might as well, since I've got another minute or two than normal, to do two things for you, just to really give you an in-depth explanation of this. We firstly see this in the imagery of her taking gulps of water in the hot sun. Which one did I do for this? So I've talked about imagery. Yeah, actually I can do subtext here. The subtext, actually no, I think the symbolism. It's more that what the action symbolizes than what she means underneath it. So the symbolism of this action is that Alice is inexperienced because, that word because is always good as we go from technique and quote into explanation. So the symbolism of this action is that Alice is inexperienced because it suggests that she either has not prepared enough water for herself, or that she is not taking the adequate breaks to comfortably rehydrate as she digs in the heat haze. Now, sometimes it's great just to put in a little extra quote, even if you don't analyze it. As long as you've analyzed your main quote, putting in another little one to show that you've really comprehended can be really good. So rehydrate as she digs in the heat haze. Secondly, now sometimes you can use firstly, secondly, thirdly, lastly, whatever. Other times you want to use words like interestingly, indeed, contrastingly, etc. So actually, let's not do secondly. Let's do, what's my second point going to be? The determined bit. Indeed, this also conveys determination, especially when compared to the other more experienced people on the dig. This is shown through the imagery of the awning. Alice is further away from the conventional site, digging site, and whilst the others have the connotations of comfort, which comes from the shelter of the awning, she chooses to expose herself to the harsh heat of the day. As a reader, we admire the determination of Alice and perhaps note some naivety in her. Yeah, I think that's good. I could go on, but I think that that's a pretty decent sort of starting point to this paragraph. So let me just move this down so it's nice and clear on the page. So do you see how we're going in depth into the word choices here? Most of you, with respect, aren't that good at doing that yet. So hopefully from this lesson, you can see that as you read a piece, take your time, stop after each paragraph, stop after each sentence sometimes if you need to. Think about the symbolism, think about the connotations, think about the subtext, think about the imagery in the words that you're reading. It will deepen your understanding of the piece. It will help you to write better paragraphs and show off to the examiners that you really understand this stuff. Okay, so that's everything for today's lesson. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any comments, please comment below. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will catch up with you on the next one.